Hello students, today we will understand the expenditure method of measuring national income. As per this method, the total final expenditure incurred by all the sectors is being aggregated and then we get gross domestic product at market price. So the sum up of all the final expenditures give us the gross domestic product at market price. Hence, this method is also known as income disposal method. Moving on, we have some components of fixed final expenditure. Majorly, there are four components: private final consumption expenditure, government final consumption expenditure, gross domestic capital formation, and net exports. We will discuss all these factors, all these components one by one. If I talk about the private final consumption expenditure, it is the expenditure incurred by households and some private non-profit institutions on all types of consumer goods. When we say consumer goods, we include every type of product in it, like durable, semi-durable, non-durable. So expenditure on each and every type of consumer goods is being included in this component. However, the expenditure on houses, be it purchase or construction, is not included because this category is included in some other component, which is gross domestic capital formation. As of now, we are talking about private final consumption expenditure, in which we include all the expenditures incurred by households and private non-profit institutions on every type of consumer good except the purchase or construction expenditure on houses, because it is included in gross domestic capital formation. Gross domestic capital formation is a different component which we will discuss further. Moving on, we have government final consumption expenditure. Now, this is again an expenditure incurred by the general government on some administrative activities. We must know what administrative services are, like defense, law and order, education, etc. And also it is calculated with the help of the formula given here: intermediate consumption of government plus compensation of employees paid by the government plus direct purchases from abroad. Basically, we add all the expenditures incurred by the general government, and out of those expenditures we deduct the sales of goods and services produced by the general government, so that we get the net government final consumption expenditure. So all the expenditure that is being incurred by the government, from those expenditures we deduct the sales and then we get the government final consumption expenditure. As far as practical questions are concerned, there are very less chances that there will be such kind of question. But still, from theoretical point of view, we must know that how do we actually get to government final consumption expenditure, and we must have a logical understanding about the same. Further, this particular component is very important and a little tricky, because sometimes there are different concepts coming out of this component and we need to understand the basic about this first. This is gross domestic capital formation, which is also known as gross investment or gross capital formation. Each and every word in this component is very important and we need to focus on every word given in this, all the terms which are mentioned in this, like gross. So gross means that it is inclusive of depreciation element. Domestic Domestic means it is within the domestic boundaries of the country. And then capital formation. So gross domestic capital formation, which basically includes gross fixed capital formation and inventory investment in it. Gross fixed capital formation, if you see, has got three components under it: gross business fixed investment, gross residential construction investment, and gross public investment. So business, residence, and public, all three together, when they are added up, then we get gross fixed capital formation. And as this is fixed component of capital formation, if we add working component also in this, then we get gross domestic capital formation. Working component is inventory investment, which is calculated by taking the difference between closing stock and opening stock, because inventory investment is nothing but the change in stock. So this is the working part, the working component, and we have the fixed component also. Adding these two, we get the main component, that is gross domestic capital formation. I am repeating myself. If we have to calculate gross domestic capital formation, then we need to have gross fixed capital formation, which is to be added to inventory investment. When we add these two, fixed plus inventory, we get the gross domestic capital formation. Next and the last component of expenditure methods is net exports, which is equal to exports minus imports. And we all know what exports and imports are. Exports refer to the expenditure by foreigners on purchase of domestic products, whereas imports refer to the expenditure by residents on foreign products. So when we add all these components that we have just understood, when we add private final consumption expenditure, gross domestic capital formation, government final consumption expenditure, and exports, these four components all together give us the gross domestic product at market price. So we need to analyze, we need to be very much concentrative towards these four elements: private, domestic, government, and net exports. All these expenditures together give us the gross domestic product at market price. And when we have to calculate national income, then with the help of necessary additions and subtractions in GDP at MP, we will be able to calculate national income, that is NNP at FC. For that, please wait for my next lecture. Thank you and have a nice day.